After the sinking of the cruiser Moscow, the Russian armed forces seem to have suffered another serious blow when an A-50 AWACS plane have been shot down and an Il-21M11 flying command post was also seriously damaged. What happened and how? Radar track data released by the Ukrainians shows that more than one aircraft had been patrolling the northern coast of the Sea of Azov near Primorsk. The A-50 AWACS arrived from the northeast and flew towards the patrol area. Just as the A-50 reached the patrol zone, it disappeared from the radar. Subsequently, another aircraft turned south-southeast, probably the IA-22, which after being hit, descended and headed for the nearest airfield, where it performed a successful emergency landing. During descent, the departing aircraft disappears below the radar horizon. The showdown was made possible by underestimating the Ukrainians and a surface-to-air missile system. What kind of SAMs? Well, there are two possibilities based on the distance and a photo about the IA-22. Before the war, Ukraine had the S-200 Vega and Dubna system with 255 and 300 km maximum range. These were decommissioned in the early 2010s. It is possible that some may have been revived and now are operational again in reduced quantities. So far, what we know is that when the Kerch bridge was attacked, several of the old remaining missiles were used, perhaps as decoys, perhaps as platform for other type of warheads. The S-200 launcher or launchers were not deployed from their original static sites. The other candidate is a type of Patriot system. The Patriot missile batteries were delivered to Ukraine with the GAM-T Guidance Enhanced Missile variant. According to sources, they have a nominal maximum range of between 160 and 220 kilometers. The distance between the front line and the patrol zone of the Russian planes on 15th of January was about 130–150 kilometers. So even the conservatively considered Patriot engagement zone is large enough to shoot down the Russian planes. The deployment zone of the S-200 system could have been even farther because the longer kinematic range of the V-880 missile. If the Ukrainians achieved success with a Patriot system, they have took the risk of deploying a missile battery within the range of Russian rocket or even tube artillery. In this case, it seems that the Russians did not consider this scenario, otherwise their patrol area would have been further away. Considering that the Ukrainian armed force received only a few Patriot batteries, this means that one of the most combat valuable and least available defense assets was risked in this operation. The maximum range of other SAMs available to Ukrainians is far insufficient for the task. The remaining S-300 PT-1, PS and the single S-300 PMU battery received from Slovakia have a maximum 75 km range. The engagement zone of the French SAM-T also ends at 120 km. Other potential air defense systems such as the NASAMS or the IRIS-T SLS have even shorter range. What does the evidence tell us? The warhead of the Patriot missile consists of 45 grams of large fragments, while the warhead of the V-880 missile contains 25,000 3.5 gram and 60,000 2 gram steel balls. The large number of small impact traces on the vertical stabilizer are the indication of the warhead with smaller fragments. Many of them were not able to penetrate and just scratched the paint. The most obvious assumption that a missile of a Patriot battery hit the target is not supported by the image about the damaged target. Interesting. After the incident, and as usual, many theories arose how the incident could have happened. Many people speculated that the kill was achieved with an MRAM missiles launched from an F-15 fighter. In my opinion, this can be completely ruled out even if the Ukrainians file any F-16 sorties at all. The reason for this is that no matter how strongly the nominal range of the A-15's radar underestimated, even for the modernized A-50U version, it definitely had to be able to detect a Ukrainian fighter jet incoming in a terrain-following mission profile. Even the basic Cold War A-15 version is capable of detecting a target with a radar cross-section of 3 square meters, at the distance at least of 220 kilometers. This would certainly have made it possible to detect an F-16 long before it got close enough to an effective missile launch. The range of AIM-21 MRAM missile launched from sea level against a target which flies at 10 km of altitude, at best 40 km or even shorter. The idea that the F-16 would ever give up the terrain-following profile is simply insane because of the threat of long-range area denial SAM systems. The more interesting question is that why the A-50 could not detect the climbing missile and perform an emergency dive to get under the radar horizon as well as the other plane. The GEM-T missile uses TVM, track via missile guidance. The target tracking radar has to continuously track the target. If the Patriot battery loses the tracking because the target dives below the radar horizon, then the missile misses the target. The V-880 missile of the S-200 missile similarly requires continuous target illumination. It is possible that the missile was detected, but it was too late to perform the dive. Despite its 10-meter wide antenna, the A-50 AWACS has a significantly smaller detection range compared to the E-3 Sentry or the E-2 Hawkeye. It is also possible that the radar was on full power when the A-50 was en route to the patrol area, especially if the crew were still carrying out the pre-mission operational checks. Why would they have done this so late? Because the practice can save operational hours and reduce the wear of the whole radar system. It is striking that the A-50 was immediately downed when it reached the patrol area, maybe even before switch to the full antenna power. There is a second conceivable reason. The question arises that maybe the V-880 missile has received an improvised upgrade and now it has active radar guidance in terminal frames thanks to a different guidance section. After all, we have already seen a GDAM bomb and a HARM missile under the wings of a MiG-29, as well as the Storm Shadow cruise missile on a Su-24. Such a development cannot be completely ruled out with a Western help. Maybe the dive was performed and the A-50 was under the radar horizon, but the active radar seeker could lock on the target because it was not far from the last known position. Let's summarize. What supports the idea that Patriot was the tool of the success? It has enough range, it has simultaneous engagement capability, and it could shoot down the targets without modification. The only thing what invalidates this idea is the damage to the IL-22 airplane. It suggests rather a V-880 missile, no matter what guidance it had. What else? The idea of friendly fire communicated by the Russians is more than hard to believe. Even with the Stone Age P-20 or P-18 radar, the A-50 incoming at high altitude would have been visible from about 250 kilometers away. It arrived from the northeastern corner of the Sea of Azov, which is friendly territory. The IL-22 command post and other planes already were present in the patrol area where the A-15 flew. Ukrainian aircraft could have arrived with a terrain-following profile only from the west or northwest. How incompetent anybody could be not be able to distinguish these targets. Especially that all long-range SAM system has an IFF system and the air situation was simple and clear. In the case of friendly fire, it is also quite an interesting question why the other planes in the area at almost the same location were not targeted and downed. The good old Soviet-style communication reflexes still alive today. And a note on the margin, similar situation happened in the 80s. American E-2C Hawkeye AWACS planes were able to detect Libyan missile launches of an S-200 Vega system. Thanks to the long-range detection, they could dive under the radar horizon in time. The radar of the smaller American AWACS was sensitive enough. The question is, what could have been the purpose of the operation? The point was maybe just to achieve a spectacular success and get a trophy that boosts the morale of the troops. Of course, it is always a good thing if the enemy loses one of its most highly valued and irreplaceable assets, which inherently has a prestige. However, a broader perspective is also possible. The incident could have led the Russian side to re-evaluate its AWACS deployment ranges. This could open the door for certain previously impossible F-15 strike missions by the Ukrainians. If the Russian fighter jets will keep a safe distance in all circumstances, then the S-400 and the S-300 VMSAMs are the only top-tier threats which have to be considered. This will be a topic for another video. Obviously, Patriot or any kind of F-200 missile batteries can be everywhere at all time. However, this incident spectacularly demonstrated that a Ukrainian long-range SAM close to the front line cannot be ruled out. Of course, the same idea applies into the opposite direction too. If the Russian S-400 and S-300 VMSAMs will start to get deployed closer to the front line in the future, that would make the Ukrainian F-16 sorties much more difficult. Time will tell what the future holds in the game of cat and mouse. If you like the video, you can share, like, subscribe or ring the bell and follow the channel. You can support it via Patreon for exchange for early access, voting on planned topics and extra content and updates about the project. So far 8 extra contents have been released, their descriptions are in the link under the video.